The arena of death. The air was thick with the scent of metal and blood. The massive arena stretched out in all directions, its high walls made of dark steel, towering over the gathered alien audience. Thousands of creatures, from different worlds, filled the stands, their glowing eyes fixed on the center where a lone human stood, Captain Ryan Carter. His hands were bruised, his clothes torn, but his eyes burned with defiance. Chains clanked as he flexed his fingers, preparing for what was to come. Above him, seated on her throne of bone and steel, was the queen of the Celtrax Empire. Her insectoid body shimmered under the harsh lights, and her mandibles clicked in amusement. "Human," she said, her voice smooth but laced with cruelty. "You stand in the arena of doom. No human has survived it. Do you think you will be the first?" Ryan swallowed the dryness in his throat. He had seen what happened to others before him. Shredded, crushed, or vaporized within minutes. But he wasn't ready to die. The queen raised a clawed hand, and the ground beneath Ryan trembled. A massive steel gate slid open with a deafening roar, and from the shadows, a monstrous creature stepped out. It was at least 10 feet tall, covered in thick, black armor-like skin. Its 6 glowing red eyes focused on Ryan as it sniffed the air. Cybernetic implants pulsed along its muscular body, and razor-sharp claws scraped against the floor, eager for blood. The crowd erupted into cheers and laughter. They had seen this beast, the Xarnoth, tear through warriors twice Ryan's size. To them, the fight was already over. Ryan's heart pounded. He had no weapons, no armor, just his instincts. He took a step back as the Xarnoth let out a deep guttural growl. Then, without warning, it charged. The fight for survival. Ryan dove to the side as the beast's claws slashed through the air, barely missing his head. The force of the attack sent dust and debris flying. He hit the ground hard but rolled back onto his feet just in time to dodge another strike. The Xarnoth was fast, too fast for its size. It lunged again, jaws snapping. Ryan barely avoided the attack, feeling the heat of its breath against his skin. He needed a plan. He couldn't fight it head-on. He had to find a weakness. His eyes darted over the creature's body, searching for something, anything, that could give him an edge. Then he saw it, a glowing blue implant near the back of its neck, pulsing in rhythm with its movements. A control device. The beast roared, charging once more. Ryan sprinted toward the nearest wall and jumped, using the momentum to push himself higher. The Xarnoth crashed into the wall, momentarily stunned. Now was his chance. Ryan landed on the creature's back, gripping its thick armor for balance. It roared in fury, twisting and turning, trying to throw him off. But he held on, reaching for the implant. With all his strength, he slammed his fist against the glowing device. Sparks flew, and the Xarnoth let out an ear-splitting screech. It staggered, its movements jerky and uncontrolled. The implant was malfunctioning. The crowd gasped as the beast crashed to the ground, twitching violently. Ryan didn't wait. He grabbed a broken piece of metal from the ground and drove it straight into the Xarnoth's exposed throat. The creature let out one final, choking growl before collapsing, lifeless. Silence. For the first time, the arena was deathly quiet. The crowd, the guards, even the queen herself, all stared in disbelief. The queen's wrath. Ryan stood over the beast, chest heaving, covered in sweat and dirt. He had done the impossible. Then the silence was broken by a slow, echoing clap. The queen. Her mandibles twitched, her expression unreadable. "Impressive," she said. "No human has ever defeated the Xarnoth." The audience erupted into a mix of cheers and angry roars. Some were thrilled by the spectacle. Others demanded Ryan's execution for ruining their entertainment. The queen raised her hand, silencing them all. She leaned forward, eyes glowing with curiosity. "Perhaps I underestimated your kind," she said. Then her tone darkened. "But a single victory does not earn you freedom." She gestured to her guards. "Take him to the slave pits. Let's see how long he lasts. Before Ryan could react, cold metal cuffs clamped around his wrists. Guards dragged him away as the Queen's laughter echoed through the arena. As he disappeared into the dark corridors beneath the arena, one thought remained in his mind. This wasn't over. Not yet. The underground rebellion. The world was dark. Not the peaceful kind of darkness that lulled people to sleep, but the cold, suffocating kind, the kind that whispered of death. Ryan Carter's body ached as he lay on the damp stone floor of his cell. His wrists throbbed where the shackles had dug into his skin, and the taste of blood lingered in his mouth. The air was thick with the scent of rust, sweat, and despair. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped, the slow and steady rhythm the only sound in the silence of the underground prison. The Queen had spared him. For now. The Celtrax Empire didn't just kill prisoners. No, they preferred something worse. They broke them. And this was where it happened. The slave pits of Xeltor, a place where hope came to die. The whisper in the darkness. Footsteps. Soft, calculated. Someone was approaching his cell. Ryan forced himself upright, his muscles screaming in protest. Through the iron bars, he saw a figure moving in the shadows, their presence barely noticeable. Then, a voice. Low, careful, but sharp as a blade. You are either the bravest human I've seen, or the dumbest. Ryan frowned. Who's asking? The figure stepped into the dim light. He wasn't Celtrax. His skin was pale blue, his dark eyes scanning Ryan with quiet intensity. He wore tattered clothing, but there was something about him. A stillness, a quiet power that told Ryan this man wasn't just another prisoner. The name's Kalzar, the stranger said. And if you want to survive, you'll listen carefully. Ryan wiped the blood from his lips and leaned forward. I'm listening. Kalzar glanced around before lowering his voice. The Queen is losing control. There's an underground movement forming. Prisoners who want to end her rule. Ryan's jaw tightened. He had no love for the Queen. He wanted her gone. But trusting someone in this hellhole, that was another matter. And you? Ryan asked. What do you want? Kalzar smirked. To see her empire burn. The plan. Ryan listened as Kalzar explained. The Queen's grip on the empire wasn't as strong as it seemed. The Celtrax feared her, but they also hated her. The gladiator pits weren't just entertainment. They were a test. The Queen watched, searching for warriors who could be useful, prisoners who could be bent to her will. But some prisoners had their own plans. A riot won't work, Kalzar said. The Queen has countermeasures for that. We need strategy. Ryan narrowed his eyes. So what's the move? Kalzar knelt down, drawing in the dirt with his finger. There's a passage beneath the pits, an old maintenance tunnel. The guards don't use it anymore, but if we can get there. He paused, looking up. We don't just escape. We bring the fight to her. Ryan exhaled slowly. It was suicide. But then again, so was staying here. The first test. The cell doors rattled. A deep guttural voice echoed through the halls. New match. Prisoner 468. Move. Ryan's number. He had no time to ask questions. Guards were already unlocking his cell. But just before they dragged him away, Kalzar's voice slipped through the air like a ghostly whisper. Prove to me you're as strong as they say, human. Then the doors slammed shut behind him. Back in the arena. The lights were blinding as Ryan was pushed into the center of the arena once more. The air was filled with the same deafening cheers, the same hungry eyes watching from the stands. But this time, something was different. The Queen wasn't watching. Instead, a towering Celtrax warlord stepped forward, holding a massive curved blade. His exoskeleton gleamed under the lights, and his eyes, piercing and cold, locked onto Ryan like a predator staring at its prey. Kill the human, a voice commanded. The warlord moved fast, faster than anything Ryan had fought before. A blade sliced through the air. Ryan barely ducked in time. The warlord spun, his second strike coming like a storm. Ryan dodged left, rolling across the sand as the blade buried itself where he had been standing seconds ago. He was outmatched, but he wasn't outsmarted. As the warlord lunged again, Ryan stepped forward instead of back, surprising his opponent. He grabbed the warlord's wrist, twisting just enough to redirect the attack. The blade sliced into the warlord's own leg. The alien let out a furious roar. The crowd gasped. Ryan didn't stop. He grabbed a handful of sand and threw it into the warlord's eyes. The creature staggered, momentarily blinded. That was all Ryan needed. A final strike, fast, brutal. He grabbed the warlord's fallen blade and drove it deep into his chest. Silence. Then, a single voice from the crowd. The human won. The spark of rebellion. Ryan stood over the fallen warlord, chest heaving. He had won again. And this time, he wasn't the only one who noticed. In the stands, prisoners watched with newfound hope. A human had defied the queen twice, and deep below the arena, in the underground cells, Kalzar smiled. The rebellion had just found its spark. The queen's ultimate test. Ryan Carter sat in the darkness, his hands clenched into fists. His body ached from the battle, bruises lining his ribs, but pain no longer mattered. Something bigger had begun. Word had spread through the underground cells. The human had won again. Twice now, he had defied the queen's expectations, and the prisoners, aliens of all species, had taken notice. But victory came with a price. A sharp metallic hiss echoed through the chamber as the heavy doors to Ryan's cell slid open. Two Xeltrax guards stomped forward, their insectoid bodies twitching with precision. One grabbed him by the arm, dragging him to his feet. "The queen has summoned you," the guard hissed, his mandibles clicking. Ryan smirked, despite the iron grip on his arm. "What? Already miss me?" The guard's grip tightened, claws pressing into his skin. Silence, human. But Ryan wasn't scared. He was curious. What did the queen want now? The queen's offer. The throne room was colder than before. The queen sat high above, her black and gold exoskeleton glistening under the dim lighting. Behind her, towering holographic screens flickered, displaying past battles, prisoners, and endless war records. She leaned forward, six eyes glowing like molten amber. "You are proving difficult to kill," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. Ryan shrugged. "What can I say? Humans don't die easy." A slow smirk spread across the queen's alien face. "That is precisely why I have summoned you." She rose from her throne, her clawed feet clicking against the steel floor. "I have one final test for you, human. If you survive, I may consider sparing your life." The moment she spoke, the walls behind her shifted, revealing a massive, circular chamber, a second arena, far larger than the first. But this time, there was no roaring crowd. This time, it was silent. Ryan's stomach tightened. Something was wrong. Then he saw him. Across the arena, another prisoner was being led into the chamber. His dark eyes flickered under the dim lights, his movements calm and precise. Kalzar, the one who had spoken of rebellion, the one who had promised escape. The queen's laughter echoed through the chamber. "You wish to fight against me? Then fight each other." Ryan's blood ran cold. She knew. Somehow, the queen had discovered Kalzar's plan, and now she had turned it into her own sick entertainment. A single Xeltrax commander stepped forward, tossing a gleaming blade between the two warriors. "Only one leaves alive." The queen leaned forward, her six eyes watching hungrily. "Kill him, human, or be killed. Betrayal or strategy." Ryan and Kalzar stood motionless. The queen was waiting for blood, but Ryan wasn't going to give it to her. His mind raced. The queen wanted them to fight, to destroy each other before the rebellion could begin. But there had to be another way. Kalzar was watching him closely, his expression unreadable. Then, Ever so slightly, he nodded. A silent agreement. They had one chance. Ryan took a slow breath, then lunged, blade flashing toward Kelzar's chest. At the last second, Kelzar dodged left. Ryan twisted, following through with a brutal punch that sent the alien staggering backward. It looked real. Convincing. But it was all an act. Kelzar swung back, his fist connecting with Ryan's ribs. Pain flared through his body. But he didn't care. The illusion had to be perfect. From her throne, the queen leaned forward, watching closely. She was buying it. The rebellion begins. The fight continued. Every movement brutal, every strike calculated. The crowd, the guards, even the queen believed it. Until the moment came. Kelzar feigned weakness. Dropping to his knees, Ryan raised the blade high, stepping forward for the final strike. And then, they moved. Faster than the guards could react, Kelzar spun, ripping a hidden knife from his belt and hurling it toward the nearest Sultrax guard. The blade embedded deep into its neck. Chaos erupted. Ryan snatched the fallen guard's weapon just as the alarms blared. The illusion was over. The prisoners watching from the underground cells knew what had happened. The human and the warrior had defied the queen, again. This was the spark they had been waiting for. And the rebellion had just begun. The queen's fury. From her throne, the queen rose in rage. "Seize them," she screeched, her voice echoing through the arena. Guards poured into the chamber, weapons raised. But it was too late. The first battle of the uprising had already started. And this time, the queen was losing control. The queen's secret weapon. The sky burned red. Ryan Carter ran through the crumbling corridors of the Sultrax warship, his breath ragged, his pulse hammering like war drums. Alarms screamed across the structure, and the metallic floors vibrated beneath his feet. The rebellion had begun. But something was wrong. This wasn't just a battle. This was a trap. A deep mechanical rumble shook the air, louder than the sirens, deeper than the chaos of war. A sound that didn't belong. And then the voice came, cold, mechanical, and filled with death. Doom protocol initiated. Planetary purge in progress. Ryan's stomach twisted. The queen wasn't trying to defend her empire. She was trying to erase it, the heart of the weapon. The underground rebellion had fought tooth and nail to get here. The queen's command tower, the nerve center of her empire, hidden deep within the warship's core. But they weren't fast enough. Ryan slammed a fist against the rusted control panel, his mind racing. Screens flickered, displaying the terrifying truth. The queen had activated the Doom protocol. A weapon designed not for war, but for mass extermination. If it completed its sequence, every living thing on the prison planet would be wiped out. Not just the rebels. Everyone. Ryan gritted his teeth. How do we shut it down? Kelzar, blood streaked across his face, slammed another command into the system. His fingers flew over the alien interface, his expression grim. We don't. His voice was tight. The weapon's AI is locked. If we try to stop it remotely, it'll trigger the purge even faster. Ryan's jaw clenched. Then we go to the source. Kelzar nodded. The central core. We destroy it physically. Ryan turned to the handful of fighters who had survived the battle so far. The rebellion was winning the fight on the surface, but none of it would matter if the purge wasn't stopped. This is it, he said, looking at them. We get to the core, or we all die. No one hesitated. Because at this point, death wasn't the worst fate anymore. Into the abyss. The path to the core was hell. The warship's security had awakened, and the halls pulsed with the hum of killer drones. Black, insect-like machines with glowing red eyes, their razor limbs slicing through metal as if it were nothing. They came in swarms. Ryan ducked under a blade, spinning to drive his stolen weapon through the drone's center. Sparks erupted as the machine collapsed, but another took its place almost instantly. Kelzar fought beside him, his movements sharp and efficient, his twin daggers flashing in the darkness. The rebellion fighters fell one by one, but they didn't stop moving, because there was no turning back. They reached the final corridor, the entrance to the core chamber. And then, a shadow moved ahead. Not a drone, not a soldier, something worse. The Queen's last guardian. The creature stepped forward, towering over them, its exoskeleton gleaming like obsidian. Its 6 glowing eyes locked onto Ryan, hunger in their depths. It was not Celtrax. It was something older, something that should not exist. Kalzar's breath hitched. Impossible. Ryan kept his stance, gripping his weapon tighter. What the hell is that? Kalzar didn't answer immediately. His voice, when it came, was almost a whisper. The Queen's first creation. The one she could never control. She didn't kill it. She kept it here, waiting. Ryan exhaled slowly. Figures. The Queen was losing, so she did what all tyrants did when the end came. She unleashed the nightmare. The creature let out a sound that was almost laughter, a deep, gurgling noise that sent a cold chill down Ryan's spine. Then it charged. The final gamble. The battle wasn't a fight. It was survival. Ryan ducked, barely avoiding the creature's massive claw. The thing moved like a hurricane, all sharp edges and merciless speed. Kalzar struck first, his blades glancing off its armor. It didn't even flinch. Another swing. Ryan blocked, but the force sent him flying. He hit the wall hard, pain exploding through his ribs. Too fast. Too strong. They couldn't kill it, which meant only one thing. We don't fight it, Ryan gasped. We trap it. Kalzar caught on instantly. The reactor. Ryan pushed himself up, ignoring the screaming pain in his ribs. If they could lure it into the reactor core, overload the energy conduits, they might have a chance. A small chance. But small was enough. They ran. The monster followed. Every step brought them closer to the end. The Queen's fall. The core chamber roared with power, its energy pulsing like the heart of a dying star. The control systems were fragile. One overload, and the whole thing would implode. Perfect. Ryan sprinted toward the edge of the platform, every fiber of his being screaming against the plan forming in his mind. He turned, facing the creature one last time. Then he jumped. For a heartbeat, he was weightless. The core's gravity pulled him in, searing heat licking at his skin. At the last second, his hand snapped forward, grabbing the emergency rail. The creature wasn't so lucky. It lunged after him, just as Kalzar fired a pulse shot at the energy stabilizers. The explosion was instant. The creature screamed as the core's gravity tore it apart, its massive body breaking apart in the white-hot light. Ryan pulled himself up, every muscle trembling. The purge system flickered, failed, and somewhere, deep in the warship, the Queen watched her empire collapse. For the first time, she knew fear. Because humanity didn't break. It fought back. Betrayal and the final stand. The silence after the explosion was unnatural. For the first time since the rebellion began, there were no alarms, no distant screams, no metallic footsteps of guards hunting down survivors. Just silence. Ryan Carter stood at the edge of the reactor platform, his fingers gripping the scorched railing. His chest heaved with exhaustion, his body screaming for rest. The Queen's ultimate guardian was gone. The Doom Protocol was offline. They had won, but something was wrong. Kalzar stood behind him, still gripping his pulse weapon. The dim red glow from the reactor core flickered across his face, highlighting a strange expression. Not relief, not victory. Something else, something colder. And then Ryan felt it. A sharp, burning pain in his side. His breath caught. He looked down. The blade was buried deep. Kalzar twisted it. Ryan choked on his own breath as fire spread through his body. Betrayal. The weight of deception. Ryan stumbled back, his vision blurring. The pain was like nothing he had felt before, not just from the wound, but from the realization. Kal-Zar, the warrior who had spoken of rebellion, of freedom, of breaking the Queen's hold, had betrayed him. Ryan's knees buckled, but he forced himself to stay standing, his blood dripping onto the cold steel. His fingers twitched toward his weapon. But Kal-Zar was faster. The alien warrior pressed the pulse pistol against Ryan's chest. "Don't," Kal-Zar warned. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Something like regret. Ryan clenched his teeth. "Why?" Kal-Zar exhaled slowly. "Because survival isn't about winning," he said. "It's about knowing when to change sides." The Queen's final move. Ryan swayed slightly, but his mind worked fast. This wasn't just about Kal-Zar. This was the Queen. She had known. She had planned this. Even in defeat, even with her empire burning, she had one more move left on the board. "I made a deal," Kal-Zar admitted. His grip on the pistol tightened. "When she saw we were winning, she made an offer. Power. Freedom. The Xeltrax empire was falling, but someone had to take its place." Ryan's heart pounded against his ribs. "And you chose yourself." Kal-Zar's jaw tightened. "I chose to live." He wasn't lying. And that made it worse. Ryan forced a breath through clenched teeth. "You think she'll let you rule?" His voice was hoarse but sharp. "You think she'll keep her word?" Kal-Zar hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. The final gambit. Ryan moved. Fast. Before Kal-Zar could react, Ryan lunged forward, ignoring the fire in his ribs, ignoring the pain slowing his limbs. He grabbed Kal-Zar's wrist, twisting the pistol aside. A shot fired, too wide. The plasma bolt slammed into the wall behind them. Ryan slammed his forehead into Kal-Zar's skull. The alien stumbled back, but Ryan didn't stop. He tore the blade from his own side, pain flaring white-hot, and drove it straight into Kal-Zar's shoulder. The warrior roared in pain, falling to his knees. Ryan towered over him, his breath ragged, his vision swimming. He could barely stand. The world tilted, but he wasn't dead, and neither was Kal-Zar. The death of a tyrant. A deep rumble shook the ship. The core's destruction had destabilized everything. They had minutes. Ryan stared down at Kal-Zar. His fingers tightened around the blade. He could end it here. One final strike. But he didn't. Instead, he turned, limping toward the control panel, his blood leaving a trail behind him. Kal-Zar watched, his breathing ragged. "You're letting me live." Ryan didn't look back. "No," he said. "I'm letting you choose." He slammed a fist against the controls. The final override. A hologram flickered to life. The Queen's transmission hub. She appeared before them, her insectoid eyes glowing with fury. She knew what was happening. She knew she had lost. "You can't win," she spat, her voice full of venom. Ryan smiled through the blood on his lips. "I already did." Then, without hesitation, he rerouted the purge system. Not toward the prisoners. Not toward the rebels. Toward the Queen's palace. Her own weapon. Her own destruction. The Queen's eyes widened in horror. And then, the screen went dark. The fall of an empire. The warship shook violently as the purge cannon redirected its final payload. A deep, resonating boom echoed through space as the sky outside turned white. The Queen's palace, her seat of power, the heart of her empire, was obliterated. Ryan exhaled, his body finally giving in. He collapsed against the console, exhausted, bleeding, but alive. Kal-Zar stood slowly, staring at the destruction. He had made his choice, and now he had to live with it. Ryan smirked weakly. "Told you," he muttered. "She was never going to let you win." Kal-Zar didn't answer, because there was nothing left to say. The Queen was dead. The empire was burning. And humanity. Humanity had survived. The Queen's fall. The stars trembled. High above the ruined palace, the Celtrax flagship drifted like a wounded beast, its once mighty structure scarred by fire and battle. Smoke curled from shattered hulls, and flickering emergency lights painted the corridors in a dim red glow. Inside, Ryan Carter was still breathing. Barely. His vision swam as he stumbled through the wreckage, one hand pressed against the wound in his side. The Queen was dead. Her empire crumbled around her, her own weapon having turned against her. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The ship was falling apart, but something felt wrong. Ryan had learned to trust that feeling. The throne room's ghost. He pushed forward, every step a battle against gravity as the ship tilted. The once grand throne room of the Celtrax Empire was now a ruin, cracked steel, shattered windows exposing the endless black of space. And yet, amidst the destruction, she was still there. Or at least, what was left of her. The Queen. Her massive, insectoid body lay against the cold floor, her exoskeleton shattered, her once magnificent wings burnt to nothing. She should have been dead. But when Ryan took another step, her eyes snapped open. A deep, guttural hiss crawled from her throat. "You think you have won." Ryan's fingers tightened around the stolen Celtrax pulse pistol at his side. His body screamed for rest, but he couldn't afford weakness. Not yet. The Queen's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile. "You are nothing," she whispered. "A pest." Ryan exhaled slowly. His ribs ached, his mind begged for rest, but he kept his stance firm. "No," he said, "I'm human." And he pulled the trigger. A single pulse shot slammed into the Queen's chest. Her body jerked, a final, shuddering gasp escaping her lips before she finally collapsed. The Queen of the Celtrax Empire was dead. For real this time. And this time, she wasn't coming back. The last betrayal. Ryan let out a breath, his vision dimming at the edges. He had done it. Then, a sharp sound behind him. A familiar voice. "I never thought I'd see the day," Calzar muttered. Ryan turned. The alien warrior stood in the shattered doorway, his dark eyes unreadable. He still lived. He had made his choice back in the reactor, but Ryan didn't know what that choice truly meant. Calzar's gaze flicked to the dead Queen, then back to Ryan. "It's done," Ryan said, forcing himself to stand straighter. "It's over." Calzar's fingers twitched near the blade at his side. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Calzar sighed. "No," he said softly. "Not yet." The final escape. The ship shuddered violently beneath them. A new alarm blared. Self-destruct protocol engaged. The Queen had known she would fall. She had left behind one final trap. Ryan and Calzar exchanged a glance. "This ship's going down," Calzar said. Ryan smirked, despite the pain lancing through his body. "Then we better not be on it." They ran. The ship crumbled around them as they sprinted through its burning corridors. Fire erupted from the walls. Metal collapsed like dying giants. But they didn't stop. Survival wasn't a guarantee. But humans didn't die easy. Through the shattered hull, Ryan saw it. The escape pods. Their only chance. And then, Calzar hesitated. Ryan turned back, breathless. "Come on." Calzar stood still, staring at the ruins of the throne room behind them, at the empire that had once ruled his entire life, at the Queen who had made him. "She's gone," Ryan said. "You don't owe her anything." Calzar's jaw tightened. Then, finally, he moved. They jumped. The escape pod's doors slammed shut. Engines roared to life. And as the Celtrax flagship collapsed in on itself, engulfed in white-hot flames, they shot into the stars, leaving the past behind. A new dawn. Ryan sat in the escape pod's small cabin, breathing hard. His side ached. His head throbbed. But he was alive. Across from him, Calzar sat silently, staring out the window as the shipwreck disappeared into the void. The rebellion had won. The Queen was dead. The Xeltrax Empire had fallen. And yet, something about the silence felt too heavy. Ryan finally spoke. "So what happens now?" Kelzar didn't answer at first. Then softly, he said, "The galaxy won't forget what you did." Ryan scoffed. "Yeah, good or bad?" Kelzar turned to face him. His expression was unreadable. "We'll find out soon enough." Ryan exhaled and leaned his head back against the cold steel. The fight was over. But the war, that was just beginning. The legend of humanity. The stars stretched out like an endless sea, cold and indifferent. Inside the escape pod, Ryan Carter was still breathing. His body ached, his ribs were bruised, and dried blood stained his torn uniform. But despite the pain, despite everything, he was alive. Across from him, Kelzar sat in silence, his gaze locked onto the endless void outside. He hadn't spoken since they left the burning wreckage of the Queen's warship. Not that Ryan minded. There were no words for what they had just survived. The Queen was dead. The Xeltrax Empire had fallen. And yet, the galaxy remained quiet, waiting, as if it was holding its breath. A message to the stars. The escape pod's holoscreen flickered to life. Static crackled, followed by a robotic voice. "Human-identified vessel detected. State your identity and purpose." Ryan leaned forward, coughing before pressing a blood-stained button on the panel. His voice was rough, but steady. "Captain Ryan Carter," he said. "Human. Survivor of the Xeltrax War." A long silence followed. Then the static cleared, and a face appeared. A reptilian alien with sharp golden eyes and an expression of disbelief. "Impossible," the alien muttered. "The Xeltrax are gone." Ryan smirked weakly. "Yeah, you're welcome." The alien's gaze flickered to Kelzar. His expression darkened. "And him." Kelzar finally spoke, his voice calm. "I fought for my people," he said. "Now I fight for something better." The alien commander hesitated, then nodded. "Understood." Then his voice shifted. "The galaxy has been watching," he said. "Many believe humanity would fade into history, that you would be wiped out, forgotten." Ryan exhaled slowly. "And now?" The commander's gaze hardened. "Now they will remember. The war that never ends." The escape pod was taken aboard a neutral fleet, one of the many factions waiting in the shadows, too afraid to challenge the Xeltrax. Now they scrambled for control, eager to fill the power vacuum left behind. Ryan watched from the ship's viewing deck as the last remnants of the Xeltrax fleet drifted in the void, broken, leaderless. And yet he knew, this wasn't the end. Power didn't just vanish, it moved, shifted, changed hands. The war wasn't over, it was evolving. Kelzar stepped beside him. "You don't look like a man who just won." Ryan didn't answer at first. Then he sighed. "Winning means something different now." Kelzar tilted his head. "And what does it mean?" Ryan stared at the stars, his jaw tightening. "It means making sure no one forgets why we fought." The legend begins. The transmission went out across the galaxy. Not just to the rebels. Not just to the survivors. But to everyone. A message, short and clear. Humanity does not bow. We rise. The name Ryan Carter became a symbol. A name whispered in the dark corners of war-torn planets. A warning to those who would enslave the weak. Some called him a hero. Some called him a terrorist. But everyone knew one thing. Humanity had returned. And this time, they weren't going anywhere.